The blood on the scrub brush had long since dried into the rough bristles, but Sarah Henderson kept pushing it across the saloon floor anyway, gritting her teeth against the white-hot agony shooting up her left arm with every stroke. She had fallen down the boarding house stairs 3 days ago, and the wrist had swollen to twice its normal size, mottled purple and green like a bruised plum. But there was no doctor in Dodge City who would see a woman without payment up front, and she had exactly 7 cents to her name. The saloon owner, Marcus Webb, had made it clear that morning that if the floors were not spotless by noon, she could collect whatever wages he owed her and find employment elsewhere, which in a town like this meant nowhere at all. The pain made her vision swim, black spots dancing at the edges as she dipped the brush into the bucket of lye water with her good hand, then switched to push the brush forward with her injured one because her right hand alone could not generate enough pressure to scrub away the ground in dirt and tobacco stains. It was October of 1878, and Dodge City was in its prime as a cattle town, which meant the saloons never closed and the floors never stayed clean for more than an hour. Cowboys flush with trail wages, tracked in mud and blood and worse, spat their chewing tobacco wherever they pleased, and occasionally bled out on the floorboards when card games went south. Sarah had been scrubbing for 2 hours, working her way from the back corner toward the bar, when the door swung open and boot heels struck the floor with a distinctive rhythm. She did not look up. Men came and went all day, and none of them ever noticed the woman on her knees with the scrub brush unless they wanted something, and what they wanted usually was not something she was willing to give. "We are closed until 4, she called out, her voice hoarse from holding back groans of pain. "Come back then." The footsteps stopped. Then they started again, coming closer, and she felt his shadow fall across her before she saw him. She looked up, squinting against the light from the doorway, and saw a tall man with dark hair curling over his collar, a weather-beaten face that might have been anywhere from 25 to 35, and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore a dusty trail coat and worn denim trousers, and his gun belt sat low on his hips in the manner of someone who knew how to use it. "You are hurt," he said, and his voice was surprisingly gentle with a slight drawl that suggested Texas. "I am working," Sarah replied, turning back to the floor. "If you need a drink, the bottles are behind the bar. Leave payment on the counter." Instead of walking away, the man crouched down beside her, close enough that she could smell leather and sage and horse. "That wrist is broken," he said, and it was not a question. "It is sprained," Sarah lied, pushing the brush forward and immediately regretting it as fresh pain lanced through her arm, so intense that she gasped and nearly dropped the brush entirely. The cowboy reached out and gently but firmly took the brush from her grip. Sarah tried to hold on, but her fingers would not obey, and then the brush was gone and he was setting it in the bucket. "That is not a sprain," he said quietly. "I have set enough bones to know the difference." "Give that back," Sarah said, trying to sound authoritative, but hearing the desperation in her own voice. "I need to finish this floor or I will lose my position." "You are going to lose your hand if that wrist is not set proper," the cowboy said. He stood and held out his good hand to her. "Come on, let me look at it in the light." Sarah wanted to refuse. She had learned years ago not to trust men who offered help, because help always came with a price. And the price was usually more than she could afford to pay, but the pain was making her nauseated and dizzy. And somewhere deep in her mind, she knew he was right. The wrist was getting worse, not better, and she had been ignoring it because she had no choice, but that did not change the fact that something was very wrong. She took his hand with her good one and let him help her to her feet. The sudden change in position made her head spin, and she swayed. His arm came around her shoulders, steadying her, and he guided her to one of the tables near the window where the afternoon light streamed in. "Sit," he said, and she sat. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down too, then held out both his hands, palms up. "May I?" he asked. And the fact that he asked that he waited for her permission made something tight in Sarah's chest loosen just slightly. She extended her injured arm, and he took it in both his hands with a care that surprised her. His fingers were calloused but gentle as he probed the swollen flesh, watching her face for reactions. When he touched a spot just above the wrist joint, she could not stop the small cry that escaped, and he nodded grimly. "It is broken clean through," he said. "Radius, maybe both bones. How long ago?" 3 days, Sarah admitted. "Sarah, 3 days," he repeated, and there was something like anger in his voice, though she did not think it was directed at her. "You have been working like this for 3 days?" "I have been eating for 3 days," Sarah replied, meeting his eyes. "That requires working?" The cowboy looked at her for a long moment, and Sarah had the uncomfortable feeling that he was seeing past her defenses, past the careful walls she had built around herself in the 5 years since she had arrived in Dodge City with nothing but the clothes on her back and a determination to survive. "What is your name?" he asked finally. "Sarah. Sarah Henderson." "I am James Collier," he said. "My friends call me Cole. And Miss Henderson, I'm going to set your wrist now, and it is going to hurt considerably, but it has to be done." Sarah felt ice slide down her spine. "I cannot pay you," she said bluntly. "I have 7 cents, that is all." "I am not asking for payment," Cole said. He stood and looked around the saloon, then walked behind the bar and returned with a bottle of whiskey and a clean rag. "Drink," he said, pushing the bottle toward her. Sarah rarely drank, but she understood what was coming, so she took the bottle and swallowed 3 large mouthfuls, feeling the burn slide down her throat and into her stomach. Cole disappeared into the back rooms and returned with strips of cloth that might once have been a sheet, and 2 flat pieces of wood that looked like they had been broken off a crate. He set these on the table, then dragged his chair around so he was sitting beside her instead of across from her. "I need you to trust me," he said quietly. "I am going to pull the bone straight, and then I'm going to splint it so it can heal proper. It will hurt like hellfire for about 30 seconds, and then it will feel better. Can you do that?" Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. She had endured worse pain in her life, though not by much. Cole positioned her arm on the table, then wrapped the rag around her upper arm. "Bite down on this if you need to," he said, offering her the end of another rag. Sarah took it, feeling foolish, but when he gripped her wrist with one hand and her forearm with the other and pulled, she understood. The pain was beyond anything she had imagined, a white-hot explosion that seemed to consume her entire body. She bit down hard on the rag, tasting dust and old soap, and heard a sound that might have been a scream but was muffled by the cloth. Then it was over. Cole was wrapping the wooden slats around her wrist, binding them tight with the strips of cloth, and the pain had diminished to a deep, throbbing ache that was almost bearable in comparison. Sarah spat out the rag and found that her cheeks were wet with tears she had not felt herself cry. "There," Cole said, tying off the last strip. "That will hold it. You need to keep it still for 6 weeks minimum, no scrubbing floors, no lifting anything heavier than a teacup, understand?" Sarah looked down at her neatly splinted wrist, then up at the half-finished floor, then back at Cole. "I will lose my position," she said flatly. "Then you will find another position," Cole replied, "one that does not require you to destroy yourself for poverty wages." "You do not understand," Sarah said, and she could hear the bitterness in her own voice. "There are no other positions, not for women like me." "Women like you?" Cole asked, and there was something dangerous in his voice. Sarah gestured at herself with her good hand. At her faded calico dress that had been mended so many times the original fabric was hard to discern. At her hair that she kept tied back in a severe bun. At her face that she knew was too thin and too worn for her 24 years. Women with no family, no prospects, no references. Women who work in saloons because nowhere else will have them. Women who are one missed payment away from the street. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" "I rent a room at the boarding house," Sarah said. "I paid through the end of the week." "Good," Cole said. He stood and walked back to the bar, returning with the bottle of whiskey. He set it on the table in front of her. "For the pain. Do not drink it all at once." Then he pulled a leather wallet from his coat pocket extracted several bills, and laid them on the table beside the bottle. Sarah stared at the money. It was more than she made in 3 months. "I told you I cannot pay you back," she said. "I am not asking you to pay me back," Cole said. "I am asking you to take care of yourself, buy food, pay your rent, rest that wrist." "Why?" Sarah asked, and she hated how her voice shook. "Why would you do this?" Cole looked at her with those storm-gray eyes, and for a moment she thought he was not going to answer. Then he said, "Because someone should have done it 3 days ago, because you should not have to choose between eating and healing, because it is the right thing to do." He turned to leave, and Sarah found herself on her feet without conscious decision, reaching out with her good hand to catch his sleeve. "Wait," she said. "At least tell me where I can find you. To thank you properly, I mean." Cole smiled, and it transformed his face, taking years off and revealing a warmth that had been hidden before. "I am staying at the Dodge House Hotel for the next few weeks. I have business in town. But you do not owe me thanks, Miss Henderson. Just promise me you will rest that wrist." "I promise," Sarah said, and meant it. Cole tipped his hat to her and walked out into the afternoon sunlight, leaving Sarah standing in the half-scrubbed saloon with a splinted wrist, a bottle of whiskey, and more money than she had seen in years. She looked down at the bills on the table, then at her wrist, then at the door through which he had vanished. Something had shifted in the world, some fundamental change that she could not quite name, and for the first time in years, Sarah Henderson felt something that might have been hope. Marcus Webb came downstairs 20 minutes later to find Sarah sitting at the table, the floor still half-finished. He opened his mouth to berate her, took in the splint on her wrist and the set of her jaw, and closed it again. "I suppose you will be wanting your wages," he said instead. "I will," Sarah replied evenly, "and I will be informing you that I'm no longer available to scrub your floors. You will need to find someone else." Webb sputtered, but Sarah simply stood, collected the wages he grudgingly counted out, added them to the bills Cole had left, and walked out of the saloon without looking back. Her wrist throbbed with every heartbeat, but her head was high. She went back to her boarding house room, a tiny space barely large enough for the narrow bed and wash basin, and sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the money spread out on the thin blanket. It was enough to live on for months if she was careful, enough to rest, to heal, to perhaps even think about what came next instead of simply surviving day to day. That night she lay awake listening to the sounds of Dodge City through the thin walls, the distant piano music from the saloons, the occasional gunshot, the lowing of cattle in the pens by the railroad tracks. She thought about Cole Collier and his gentle hands, the way he had asked permission before touching her, the anger in his voice when he learned she had been working on a broken wrist for 3 days. She thought about the way he had walked away without expecting anything in return, and tried to remember if anyone had ever done something like that for her before. She could not think of a single instance. The next few days passed in a blur of enforced rest and unfamiliar leisure. Sarah discovered that when she was not working herself to exhaustion, she had time to think, and thinking was dangerous. She thought about her past, about the farm in Missouri where she had grown up, about her parents dying of cholera when she was 17, about the aunt who had taken her in and then married her off to a man 3 times her age who drank too much and hit too hard. She thought about running away 2 years later, about the long journey west with a wagon train, about arriving in Dodge City and discovering that opportunities for women alone were even more limited than she had imagined. She thought about Cole Collier, more than was probably wise. On the 4th day after he had splinted her wrist, Sarah walked to the general store and bought fabric, good sturdy cotton in a deep blue that reminded her of the sky at dusk. She bought thread and needles with her good hand, and when she returned to her room, she began to sew. It was awkward with one hand essentially useless, but she managed, and it felt good to create something instead of simply scrubbing away at other people's messes. On the 7th day, she walked to the Dodge House Hotel. It was a fine establishment, far finer than anywhere Sarah usually went, with a carpeted lobby and upholstered chairs and a clerk behind the desk who looked at her worn dress with barely concealed disdain. Sarah lifted her chin and walked up to the desk anyway. "I am looking for Mr. James Collier," she said. "Could you tell me his room number?" The clerk sniffed. "We do not give out the room numbers of our guests," he said. "If you would like to leave a message, I can see that he receives it." Sarah was about to argue when a familiar voice spoke from behind her. "Miss Henderson?" Cole said, and she turned to find him coming down the stairs dressed in clean trousers and a white shirt that made his dark hair seem even darker. "This is a pleasant surprise." "Mr. Collier," Sarah said, suddenly nervous, "I hope I am not disturbing you. I wanted to check in to let you know that the wrist is healing well." "I am glad to hear it," Cole said. He glanced at the clerk, then back at Sarah. "Would you like to take a walk? It is a fine afternoon." "I would like that," Sarah said. They walked out together, leaving the disapproving clerk behind, and strolled down Front Street past the shops and saloons and the railroad depot. Cole matched his pace to hers, his hands clasped behind his back, and for a while they walked in comfortable silence. "I wanted to thank you again," Sarah said finally, "for what you did. You may have saved my hand." "You do not need to thank me," Cole said, "but you are welcome all the same. How are you managing? Have you found other work?" "Not yet," Sarah admitted. "I have been resting like you told me to, and sewing. I used to make dresses back before—" She trailed off, not wanting to explain the whole sordid story. "Before?" Cole prompted gently. "Before life got in the way," Sarah said. "But I am thinking perhaps I could do it again. Make dresses, I mean. There are not many dressmakers in Dodge City, and the women who come through on the trains sometimes need alterations or repairs." "That sounds like a good plan," Cole said. "Better than scrubbing saloon floors anyway." They had reached the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to open prairie, and by unspoken agreement they stopped, looking out at the grassland stretching to the horizon. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said. "Of course." "Why were you there that day? At the saloon, I mean. You said it was closed." Cole was quiet for a moment. "I was looking for you," he said finally. Sarah turned to stare at him. "Looking for me? But you did not even know me." "Not you specifically," Cole clarified, "but someone. I had been in town for 2 days and I kept seeing you around, walking to work before dawn, walking home after dark, always alone, always looking exhausted, and I thought—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I thought there is someone who needs help, and I can help, so why would I not?" "Most people would not," Sarah said quietly. "I know," Cole said. "My mother would have been ashamed of me if I had not." "Tell me about her," Sarah said. "Your mother." Cole smiled, that same transforming smile that softened his features. "She was a force of nature. Raised 6 boys on a ranch in Texas. Buried my father when I was 15 and kept the whole operation running by sheer determination. She taught us that strength means protecting people who cannot protect themselves, and that a man's worth is measured by what he does when nobody is watching." "She sounds remarkable," Sarah said. "She was," Cole agreed. "She died 3 years ago. Some days I still catch myself thinking I should write her a letter. Tell her about something I have seen." "I'm sorry," Sarah said, and meant it. "My parents died when I was 17. Cholera." "That is hard," Cole said. "I am sorry too." They stood together in the afternoon sun, 2 people who had lost things and survived anyway, and Sarah felt something shift between them, some recognition of shared experience. "Would you like to have dinner with me?" she asked, surprising herself. Cole turned to look at her, and his smile widened. "I would like that very much, Miss Henderson." "Sarah," she said. "Please call me Sarah." "Sarah," Cole repeated, and the way he said her name made something warm unfold in her chest. "Then you must call me Cole." They had dinner that night at a small restaurant off Front Street, and then they had dinner again the next night and the night after that. Cole told her about his work, buying and selling cattle, about the ranch in Texas that his brothers now ran, about his travels through Kansas and Colorado and New Mexico territory. Sarah told him about learning to sew from her mother, about the farm in Missouri, about the dream she had once had of opening her own shop. "Why did you not?" Cole asked. Sarah looked down at her plate. "Life got in the way," she said again, and this time Cole reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "You do not have to tell me," he said gently, "not if you do not want to." But Sarah found that she did want to, so she told him about her aunt, about the husband she had not chosen, about running away in the middle of the night with nothing but a carpet bag and her mother's sewing kit. She told him about the wagon train, about arriving in Dodge City with no money and no prospects, about the series of jobs that had each been worse than the last until she had ended up scrubbing floors in a saloon. Cole listened without interrupting, his hand warm on hers, and when she finished, he said, "You are one of the strongest people I have ever met." Sarah laughed, but it came out bitter. "I am a woman scrubbing floors with a broken wrist." "You are a woman who survived," Cole corrected, "who kept going when many people would have given up, who is still dreaming about opening a dress shop even after everything that has happened. That is strength, Sarah." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes and blink them back. She was not used to being seen this way, as something other than a drudge or a convenience. "Thank you," she whispered. Over the following weeks, Cole and Sarah became inseparable. He took her to the theater when a traveling troupe came through town, to the restaurant for meals, on long walks through Dodge City and out onto the prairie. He bought her fabric and thread, and she made him a new shirt, dark blue with pearl buttons that she sewed on with painstaking care. He wore it to dinner and told her it was the finest shirt he had ever owned, and she knew he meant it. Her wrist healed slowly, the swelling going down, the pain receding to a dull ache and then to nothing at all. 6 weeks after Cole had splinted it, she removed the wrapping and found that she could move her fingers, flex her wrist, grip things without pain. It was not quite as strong as her right hand, but it was functional, and that was more than she had hoped for. "Thank you," she told Cole that night over dinner. "I mean it. Thank you for giving me my hand back." "Thank you for letting me help," Cole said. Then after a pause, "Sarah, I need to tell you something." Sarah felt her stomach drop. This was the moment, she thought. This was when he would tell her he was leaving, going back to Texas or moving on to the next cattle deal. This was when the dream would end, and she would return to reality. "I am in love with you," Cole said. Sarah stared at him. "What?" "I am in love with you," Cole repeated. "I have been for weeks now, but I did not want to say anything while you were still healing, while you might have felt obligated because of what I did. But your wrist is healed now, and I cannot go another day without telling you. I love you, Sarah Henderson. I love your strength and your courage, and the way you keep dreaming even when the world tries to break you. I love the way you bite your lip when you are concentrating on sewing, and the way you laugh at my terrible jokes, and the way you look at the prairie like you are seeing something the rest of us miss." Sarah could not breathe. "Cole, You do not have to say anything," Cole said quickly. "I know I'm springing this on you. I know we have only known each other a few months, but I needed you to know how I feel. I needed you to know that when I look at you, I see my future. If you will have me." Sarah found her voice. "Of course I will have you. You foolish man. I have been in love with you since you took that scrub brush out of my hand and splinted my wrist proper." Cole's face lit up like the sun rising. He stood, came around the table and pulled her to her feet, and then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back. And the other diners in the restaurant were applauding, but neither of them cared. "Marry me," Cole said when they finally broke apart. "I know it is fast. I know we should wait. But marry me anyway. Come back to Texas with me. We will build that dress shop you dream about. We will build a life together." "Yes," Sarah said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married 3 days later by the justice of the peace, with the hotel clerk and the restaurant owner as witnesses. Sarah wore a dress she had made herself, the deep blue fabric that reminded her of the sky at dusk, and Cole wore his pearl button shirt. It was not a fancy ceremony, but it was theirs. And when Cole slipped a simple gold band on her finger, Sarah felt like the richest woman in the world. They left Dodge City a week later, traveling by train to Texas, to the ranch where Cole had grown up. His 5 brothers greeted them with boisterous welcomes and endless teasing, but Sarah could see the approval in their eyes, the way they watched Cole watching her with a protectiveness that reminded her of her own family long ago. The ranch was sprawling and beautiful, thousands of acres of grassland under a sky that seemed to stretch forever. Cole's brothers had kept the house exactly as their mother had left it, and Sarah felt the woman's presence in every carefully chosen detail, every hand-stitched curtain and polished surface. "She would have liked you," Cole said that first night as they stood on the porch watching the sunset. "She would have said you had grit." "I hope so," Sarah said, leaning into his side. "I would have liked to meet her." "So would I," Cole said, "but I think she would be happy, knowing that I found you." Sarah turned in his arms so she could see his face. "I am the one who found you," she said. "Or you found me. Whichever it was, I am grateful." Cole kissed her soft and sweet, and Sarah felt the last of her defenses crumble away. She had spent so long protecting herself, building walls to keep the world out, but Cole had walked through those walls like they were made of paper, and instead of hurting her, he had shown her what it meant to be loved. They built the dress shop in the nearby town of San Angelo, a tidy building with large windows for light and a painted sign that read Henderson and Collier Fine Dressmaking. Sarah hired 2 local women to help with the sewing, and within 6 months they were turning away customers. Women came from miles around for her designs, for the way she could take a woman's dreams and translate them into fabric and thread. Cole continued to work with his brothers on the ranch, but he spent every evening with Sarah, sitting in the shop while she worked, telling her about his day, listening to her tell him about hers. They fell into a rhythm, a life that fit them both like a perfectly tailored garment. A year after they were married, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. She told Cole over breakfast, watching his face cycle through surprise, joy, and terror in rapid succession. "We are having a baby," he said, like he could not quite believe it. "We are having a baby," Sarah confirmed, smiling. "I do not know how to be a father," Cole said, and for the first time since she had known him, he sounded uncertain. "You will learn," Sarah said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "We will both learn, together." Their son was born in the spring of 1880, a healthy baby with his father's dark hair and his mother's determination. They named him Thomas, after Cole's father, and Sarah had never known it was possible to love someone so fiercely, so completely. Cole was a devoted father, up in the night to walk Thomas when he fussed, changing diapers without complaint, singing off-key lullabies that made Sarah laugh. 2 years later, their daughter arrived, a tiny thing with wisps of blonde hair and her father's gray eyes. They named her Catherine, and she completed their family in a way Sarah had not known was missing. The dress shop continued to thrive, and Cole's cattle business expanded. They built a larger house on the ranch, with room for the children to run and play, with a big kitchen where Sarah taught Catherine to make biscuits and a workshop where Cole taught Thomas to work with leather. They hosted dinners for Cole's brothers and their families, for the women who worked in the shop, for the neighbors who became friends. Sarah's wrist ached sometimes in cold weather, a reminder of that day in Dodge City, but she did not mind. It was a small price to pay for the life she had built, for the man who had taken the scrub brush from her hand and splinted it proper, who had seen her when she was invisible to everyone else. On their 10th anniversary, Cole took her back to Dodge City. The town had grown, become more civilized, but the saloon where they had met was still there, though under new management. They stood outside for a moment, Sarah's hand in Cole's, and looked at the building that had changed both their lives. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked. "Walking in that day, taking a chance on a woman scrubbing floors?" Cole turned to look at her, and the love in his eyes was as strong as it had been that first day, stronger even, tempered by years of shared joy and struggle. Never, he said firmly. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Sarah Collier, the absolute best. You are the best thing that ever happened to me too, Sarah said, and kissed him there on the street in front of the saloon, not caring who saw. They went home to Texas, to their children and their businesses and their life together. Thomas grew tall and strong with his father's calm temperament and his mother's eye for detail. He went to work on the ranch with his uncles and eventually took over managing the breeding program. Catherine inherited her mother's talent for sewing and her father's head for business. She expanded the dress shop into a full mercantile, selling not just dresses but fabric and notions and all manner of household goods. Sarah and Cole grew old together, their dark hair turning silver, their faces gaining lines that told the story of their years. They sat on their porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the prairie, holding hands the way they had done since the beginning. "Do you remember," Sarah said one evening when they were in their 60s, "what you said to me that first day, when I asked you why you were helping me?" "I said because it was the right thing to do," Cole replied. "And it was, but I did not tell you the whole truth." "What was the truth?" Sarah asked, curious. Cole smiled. "The truth was that I saw you on your knees with that scrub brush and that broken wrist still working, still fighting, and I thought, there is someone worth knowing. There is someone extraordinary. And I was right." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Cole Collier." "I love you too, Sarah Collier. Always have. Always will." They sat together as the stars came out, two people who had found each other in the worst of circumstances and built the best of lives. Sarah thought about the woman she had been, scrubbing floors in a Dodge City saloon, certain that her life was over before it had really begun. She thought about the man who had taken the time to see her, to help her, to love her. And she thought about the life they had built together, the children and grandchildren who bore their names, the businesses that would continue long after they were gone. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Cole asked. "For taking the brush away," Sarah said. "For splinting it proper. For seeing me when no one else did." "Thank you for letting me," Cole replied. "For taking a chance on a dusty cowboy with more heart than sense." "Best chance I ever took," Sarah said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They stayed on the porch until the moon rose high and bright, illuminating the prairie in silver light. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of their grandchildren visiting, Thomas's children running through the halls the way their father had once done, Catherine's daughters helping in the kitchen. It was a full life, a good life, better than either of them had dared to dream in those early days in Dodge City. Sarah's wrist ached a little in the cool night air, that old injury making itself known, and she rubbed it absently. Cole noticed, as he always did, and took her hand in both of his, warming it with his touch. "Does it hurt much?" he asked. "Not really," Sarah said. "Just enough to remind me." "Remind you of what?" "That broken things can heal," Sarah said, "if someone cares enough to help them." Cole raised her hand to his lips and kissed her wrist right over the old break. "You were never broken, Sarah. Bent, maybe, hurt, but never broken." "Neither were you," Sarah said. They smiled at each other in the moonlight, two people who had started with nothing but had found everything in each other. The prairie wind blew soft and warm, carrying the scent of sage and grass, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang to the stars. Inside, their grandchildren called for them, wanting a story before bed, and Sarah and Cole stood together, moving with the careful synchronization of two people who had spent decades learning each other's rhythms. They walked inside hand in hand, ready to tell stories of the old days, of Dodge City and cattle drives, and a woman scrubbing floors with a broken wrist, and the cowboy who took the brush away and changed both their lives forever. Years later, after Cole had passed quietly in his sleep at the age of 78, Sarah found a letter he had written her, tucked inside her sewing box. She opened it with trembling fingers, reading his familiar handwriting through tears. "My dearest Sarah," it read, If you are reading this, then I have gone on ahead, and I am sorry for that because I would have liked more time with you. 1,000 lifetimes would not have been enough, but I want you to know that every single day with you was a gift. From that first moment in the saloon, when I saw you refusing to give up, refusing to let the world break you, I knew you were special. Thank you for letting me love you. Thank you for loving me back. Thank you for the life we built, the children we raised, the years we shared. You were and are and always will be the best thing that ever happened to me. Wait for me, my love. I will find you again. I will always find you. All my love. Forever and always, Cole. Sarah clutched the letter to her chest and wept, but they were not entirely tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude, of remembrance, of a love that had lasted a lifetime and would last beyond. She thought of everything they had shared, all the moments big and small that had made up their years together, and she knew she had been blessed beyond measure. She lived 5 more years, staying in the house they had built, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She kept sewing almost to the end, her hands still skilled despite the arthritis that had settled into her joints. The old wrist injury never troubled her much, a testament to how well Cole had said it all those years ago. On the morning she died, peacefully in her sleep at the age of 76, her grandchildren found her with a smile on her face, her hands stretched out across the bed as if reaching for someone only she could see. At her funeral, Thomas and Catherine told the story their parents had told them, of a cowboy and a woman scrubbing floors, of a broken wrist splinted proper, of a love that had started with a simple act of kindness and grown into something extraordinary. Their children told the story to their children, and their children told it to theirs until it became part of the family legacy, a reminder that love can come when you least expect it, in the places you least expect to find it. The dress shop still stands in San Angelo, now run by Catherine's great-granddaughter, and above the door hangs the original sign, Henderson and Collier, Fine Dressmaking. The house on the ranch is still there too, filled with the descendants of Sarah and Cole. People who carry their names and their values, who remember that strength means helping those who cannot help themselves, that kindness matters, that love is worth fighting for. And sometimes on quiet evenings when the wind blows just right across the Texas prairie, people swear they can see 2 figures on the porch of the old house sitting close together, holding hands, watching the sunset the way they did for so many years. Some say it is just shadows and wishful thinking. But those who believe in love, in the kind of love that transcends time and death, know better. They know that Sarah and Cole found each other again, just as he promised they would. They know that some bonds are too strong to be broken, even by death. And they know that somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, a woman who once scrubbed floors with a broken wrist sits beside a cowboy who took the brush away, and they are happy, and they are together. And they always will be. Their story, which began in a Dodge City saloon in October of 1878 with an act of simple kindness, became a legend in their family, a reminder that the best things in life often come when we take the time to see others, to help them, to love them. Sarah and Cole Collier built a life on that foundation, and it was a life worth living, worth remembering, worth celebrating. And in the end, that is all any of us can hope for. To love and be loved, to build something meaningful, to leave the world a little better than we found it. Sarah and Cole did all of that and more. They started with nothing but pain and hardship, and they created joy. They took broken pieces and made something whole. They proved that with love, with determination, with willingness to help and be helped, anything is possible. Their legacy lives on in the children they raised, the businesses they built, the community they served, and most of all, in the story of how they met. She was scrubbing floors with a broken wrist, and he took the brush away and splinted it proper. It was a small moment that changed everything. It was the beginning of a love story that would echo through generations. It was, in the end, exactly what love should be. Seeing someone in pain and choosing to help. Seeing someone's worth when the world overlooks them. Taking a chance on connection even when logic says to walk away. Sarah and Cole Collier proved that love can bloom in the unlikeliest places, can grow from the smallest seeds, can become something vast and enduring if tended with care. They proved that broken things can heal, that hurting people can find happiness, that endings can become beginnings. They proved that kindness matters, that compassion changes lives, that taking the time to truly see another person can make all the difference. Their story, the story of the cowboy and the woman scrubbing floors, became the foundation of a family that would grow and spread across Texas and beyond. It became a touchstone, a reminder of where they came from and what they valued, and it became proof that love, real love, the kind that lasts, often starts with the simplest gesture. Taking the brush away and splinting it proper, seeing someone's pain and choosing to ease it, offering help without expectation of return. That is the legacy of Sarah and Cole Collier. That is the story that began in Dodge City in 1878 and echoed through the decades that followed. That is the love that built a family, a business, a life worth living. And that is the reminder passed down through generations that we all have the power to change someone's life with a single act of kindness, a single moment of seeing them, really seeing them, and choosing to help.